Good morning, friends. Welcome to Evolve 2020, empowering L&D superheroes to support their remote workforce. My name is Rahul, and I'll be your host for today. This micro-webinar series is brought to you by Harbinger Interactive Learning. Harbinger Interactive Learning is a global design and development company specializing in helping organizations migrate their classroom-based trainings into virtual and digital formats. Harbinger Interactive Learning has over 30 years of experience in delivering innovative learning solutions for various industry verticals. For more information, please log on to harbingerlearning.com. Today is the 5th episode in this micro webinar series, and we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is how to get your audience hooked through visual design during these virtual instructor-led training sessions. Now is the time to welcome our guest for today's episode. We have Suvidhi with us. Suvidhi is an instructional design expert at Harbinger Interactive Learning. Good morning, Suvidhi. Welcome to Evolve 2020.
Hey Rahul, good morning. I'm so excited to be on Evolve 2020 today.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to be on this show today. So Suvidhi, if I could request you to tell us a little bit about yourself, help the audience know you a little better.
Sure. Hello everyone. I'm Suvidhi and I carry over 7+ years experience in e-learning while completing 2 years in Harbinger. As an instructional designer, my passion is to design interactive and engaging courses for all types of learners, using the instructional design and visual design as the base.
Great. Thank you so much for this introduction. So before we take a deep dive in today's topic, I had a question for you. In your opinion, what do you think is more important, instructional design or visual design?
Well, that's a great question. I would like to say that it's all about maintaining a fine balance between instructional design and visual design. While the structure and format of lessons are a part of instructional design, including questions of whether to create learning games, simulations, asynchronous e-learning, job aids, or some other format. So that's about instructional designing. Whereas what the content looks like and how the learners interact with it falls under visual design. And specifically talking about the importance of visual design, I would like to highlight 3 points. 1, appeal. 2, comprehension. And 3, retention. So I believe that visual content is effective because of the way our brain works. Research says that our brains can process visual information 60,000 times faster than it takes to decode text. Isn't that a vast difference? So in fact, it takes 1/10 of a second for our brain to process visual prompts. And then there is always the challenge of limited attention span. It is interesting to know that an adult learner has an attention span of just 8 seconds, leaving you with a very short window to capture their interest.
Yes, absolutely. And I have, actually read and heard a lot about this attention span. And I guess they say that humans have lesser attention span than a goldfish.
Yes, you have heard it right, Rahul.
Right, right. So, Suvidhi, now I think the audience would like to hear from you as to what are those key things that we should take care of in terms of design, visual design, which will help us keep our audience engaged during those virtual sessions.
Sure. The first thing which is very important is knowing your audience. We should always try to do a thorough analysis of who our audience is. And then based on that analysis, we should choose a design strategy. So, for example, the design style that you would use for an audience which consists of millennials and Gen Zs would be very different as compared to some other audience group, isn't it?
Mhm.
The next one is about storytelling, which is also very interesting. So, visuals, as we know, are very effective, but visuals that tell you a story are really very powerful. So, considering visuals that can elicit an emotional response is very important. If you can get an emotional response from your learners, you have scored a run in terms of engaging your audience.
I totally agree with you there. So with the storytelling, it's a very powerful and potent tool to keep your learners engaged during these sessions. And what if you can, get emotional responses from the learners through, the right kind of visual design that's would be very interesting. And as they, say, pictures speak 1,000 words.
Absolutely. So now I think let's take a moment and try to understand the role of colors and fonts in visual designing. So sometimes we might get a feeling that colors and fonts are mostly about the branding guidelines that the marketing team forces us to use. Well, I think there's more to it. For fonts, they say that more elegant fonts can convey a feeling of sophistication and relaxation, while modern fonts might reflect a sense of professionalism. And for colors as well, there are really interesting theories. I would like to give you an example of color green, which is associated with things like money, finances, banking, and of course, Wall Street.
Wow, that was an interesting example. I never thought of it this way, green for Wall Street.
Yeah.
Cool. And you know what? The other day I was reading somewhere and it said orange color is associated with optimism. And I'd never thought of it that way. But ever since I read that information and now I'm listening into you, I can, start to relate all this. I can, now start connecting the dots. This was cool. Thank you so much for, sharing this.
Mhm.
And so now what is the next tip that you would like to share with us?
So next is about white spaces. It is very important to keep the clutter as minimum as possible. Content that is not relevant, I feel, should be left out of the slides and screens. If it doesn't help the learners to achieve their goals and objectives, then forego adding it to the page. This white space also applies to text pages. So keep the text short and sweet so that the learners can effectively acquire the information without being overloaded by an abundance of concepts or ideas simultaneously.
Well, it's very true. I mean, if the slide or the screen is too busy, people can get lost and their minds can wander off, and that is where we start losing the engagement.
Yes, Rahul, I feel that's true. And you know why this happens? Uh, so that's because of cognitive overload.
Okay, cognitive overload. That's could you please tell us a little bit more about this? What this cognitive overload is, and also just briefly highlight what its relevance is while designing learning material.
Of course. So cognitive overload is a situation where the instructor overloads the learners with lot of information and too many tasks at the same time. So this results in the learner being unable to process this information. It is very important while designing our learning material, and especially for the virtual instructor-led training sessions, we should keep all these points in our mind. So we should avoid dumping too much content on a single screen.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for explaining this. So definitely, I think while we create our content, put up the slide decks for virtual instructor-led training sessions, we should be mindful that we have to avoid cognitive overload, because you can start losing your learner engagement because of this. So Suviti, thank you so much for sharing all these cool tips with us. I think they were really useful, some interesting things that we learned from you today. And once again, thank you so much for being with us on Evolve 2020.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you. So for our audience, we'll just quickly summarize what Suviti spoke about today. So in terms of, to start with, you need to do an analysis of your target audience, whom you are dealing with, and then pick up a design strategy according to the audience, not one size fits all. Storytelling, use visuals to, tell a story. I mean, you should weave a story around your visuals. That's a very powerful and potent tool. Pay some attention to the types of colors and fonts that you're using. It's not just branding guidelines, but there's more to it in terms of what kind of feelings and emotions it can elicit amongst the learners. White spaces. Please ensure that your content, your slide has sufficient white spaces. Do not clutter it. And eventually avoid cognitive overload. So only have relevant content. Keep it short and simple, not too text heavy. So this was the summary of the things that Suviti spoke to us today. And for our audience, if you have any questions or you would like to know more in detail about any of these specific tips, you want to have a conversation with Suviti one-on-one, or if you have any other thoughts, any other tips that you want to share, please do drop us a line at info@harbingerlearning.com. I'll repeat, it's info@harbingerlearning.com. And before we sign off, let me tell you, in our next episode, we are going to bring in another superhero from the L&D community. And we'll be talking about another very interesting topic, and that is how to rapidly create interactive supplementary training material for your virtual instructor-led training sessions. Supplementary training material which you can use pre and post your virtual instructor-led training sessions. So some tools, tricks, how you can quickly create them and supplement your learners. So once again, thank you very much for taking the time out for being with us on this Evolve 2020 episode. Hope you enjoyed the tips and tricks that we heard from Suviti today. See you next week, same day, same time. Till then, stay safe and stay inspired. Thank you.